Welcome to Psychic Insights, where pop culture meets higher consciousness and the tea is always a little bit mystical. I'm Robin Richardson, your psychic girlfriend, and around here we don't just watch the drama unfold. We read the energy behind it, whether it's celebrity scandals, reality TV, chaos, or true crime with a twist. I'm tuning in to bring you the intuitive scoop the headlines miss. So buckle up, because your aura's about to get entertained. It's Robin Richardson. Welcome back to my channel. I'm your psychic girlfriend. And if you haven't, like and subscribe and ring the bell. I appreciate everything, and I appreciate y'all doing that. Helps me out. Helps the channel grow. All right, so, oh my gosh. So every once in a while, a story kind of sticks with you, right? Not because of the drama, but something feels, layered. And that's how I felt after watching the interview between Oprah Winfrey and Kristin Cabot. You might remember who she is. She was the woman who, she was at the concert, the Coldplay concert with her boss, Andy Byron, and she was caught canoodling with her boss, And again, this isn't gossip or judgment. It's, I just want to explore something a little deeper today because I wanted to know why the story went viral in the first place and what it really reveals about our culture and what I picked up intuitively when I pulled cards to understand the energy surrounding it. And I hope you're interested in the story, because I was. And, sometimes these viral moments, just tell us more about society that they do about the people involved. And most of us saw the clip. A kiss cam at the Coldplay concert, a brief moment between two people that suddenly became visible to thousands of people in the arena and eventually millions of people online. And within hours, the internet had turned into a moment, into a full narrative. People became, they were analyzing, they were judging, they were looking at their body language, their relationship, their personal lives, and then suddenly two people were no longer just two people. They became characters in a story the internet was writing. And I can't even imagine. But we had to ask the question, why did this story spread so quickly? And there's actually, 3 psychological reasons stories like this spread. And the first is the caught in public factor. And, humans are fascinated by unscripted moments. And when something suddenly becomes, that was private, becomes public, people feel like they're witnessing something authentic. And the second factor is power dynamics. And when a story involves a workplace hierarchy, especially involving a CEO, people immediately begin questioning boundaries, influence, and ethics. And the third factor is relationship symbolism. Stories that hint at complicated romantic dynamics trigger something deeply and personal in people. And, many viewers bring their own experiences of betrayal, divorce, or complicated relationships into the story. And so suddenly millions of people aren't just watching a moment. They're projecting their own emotions onto it. So when I watched the interview with Oprah Winfrey, first of all, I was just like, what? But I had 2 very complicated emotions at the same time, which was fascinating to me, because part of me felt compassion. The internet can obviously be brutal, and no one deserves to have their life turned into a viral spectacle overnight. And I especially felt empathy for the families involved, the children and the spouses and the people who didn't choose to be a part of the public conversation. But then another part of me found myself wondering about something deeper, and that's accountability. And not in a harsh or punitive way, but just in a human way. And when relationships intersect with work, power dynamics, and marriage, those situations are rarely simple. And then there was another layer that stood out to me. And I wanted to ask, why did Kristin Cabot seem to receive so much more public attention than Andy Byron? Because if you look at the commentary online, it focused a lot on her choices, her character, her intentions. And yet the man involved seemed to fade more quickly into the background of the conversation. And I kind of wondered, why was that? Because the situation involved two people. And often the woman becomes the focal point of the story. There were comments about, did she steal someone's husband? Should she sleep her way to the top? Things like that. And women are often unconsciously viewed as guardians of relationships and boundaries. Some of the question was, why did she allow this, even though two people were involved? And I also think that situations like this activate very old archetypal in our culture. There's the other woman, And once that narrative begins circulating, it becomes very easy for people to project their own experiences and emotions onto that figure. And suddenly the situation becomes symbolic. But life is rarely that simple. Real life is messy. People go through separations. People go through, affairs and cheating and things like that. People develop feelings at work if they have a complicated life. And sometimes those moments happen under circumstances no one expects, right? So I pulled cards because before I fully processed the interview, I wanted to explore the energy around the situation. And what we got were letter, birds, tower, bear, cross, woman, well, centered around her in this interview, right? Snake, mountain, ring, I pulled a lot, clouds, anchor, and bouquet. All right, so let's talk about that. Let's unpack it, because what struck me immediately is how this spread spoke about communication and public perception. And I wondered during the, why she would go on this podcast with Oprah Winfrey. It's been 8 months, I think, since the Coldplay concert, So, the cards talk to us about, we have the letter and the birds, and it represents the messaging and public conversation. And in modern times, they can easily represent media, interviews, and public discussion. And then we have the tower and the bear. And the tower and the bear, often represents institutions or power structures. And that combination can point to corporate environments or leadership dynamics. And then we had the cross, the woman, and then the snake. Okay, so we had these three. And the cross often represents burden or a heavy situation, which I would say this is, right? The snake doesn't always mean deception, but sometimes it means complexity or entanglement. And that combination suggests to me that the woman navigating the situation that carries a lot of emotional weight and many layers, multiple layers. And then we have the mountain and the ring. And that represents commitments, partnerships, agreements, and sometimes marriage. The mountain represents obstacles, and that pairing suggests that a relationship or commitment encountering a significant challenge. All right, and then we had the clouds and the anchor and the bouquet. Okay, and that's the cloud represents confusion, anchor represents reputation and stability, and bouquet represents something presented beautifully or publicly. And when I saw those three cards together, I felt like it's a story about confusion around a reputation followed by a carefully presented public narrative. Something for me, what it didn't scream is deception, but something a little bit more human, a complicated situation, and the public narrative, institutional dynamics, relationship challenges, and a moment where someone is trying to restore stability and reputation. Now, what I find most interesting about moments like this isn't the gossip, it's what they reveal around us and how quickly we judge, how quickly we create a narrative, a story, we assign the roles. One's the villain, one's the victim, one's the temptress, one's the hero. But the truth is most human situations exist somewhere in the gray area. When I watched this, I felt like this was quite layered. I don't know if it did the job that it was intended. I felt like it could have been better if Kristin had come on there and 100% owned her choices, and instead of defending or making someone else a villain, whether it was the Coldplay, Chris Martin, whether it was Andy, whoever, at the end of the day, we make choices. And while no one deserves to have the brutal unleashment of judgment, and I think at one point there were some threats against her and her children. Come on, like that takes a special kind of evil, in my opinion, to do to someone else. But I also feel like her coming on the podcast and doing the interview didn't land quite right. Anyway, my hope for everyone involved, Andy, Kristin, their families, their children, their partners, whoever they are or not, I hope they're able to move forward more privately. And again, I don't know why she would do this podcast, honestly. Because the reality is the internet moves on pretty quickly, and people in the story have to live with the consequences much longer. And maybe moments like this remind us that behind every viral clip, there are human beings navigating complicated lives. And I'm curious what you think. Did the interview, if you saw it, bring you any clarity? Or did you feel like there were deeper layers to this story? Let me know in the comment section. And if you enjoy looking at cultural moments through the intuitive, energetic lens, subscribe for more. And I appreciate your support as always. And I'll see you in the next one.